I also, hopefully everything is going smoothly so far. If not, again, email, reach out. I will be happy to help with some of those issues. Uh, One of the things that has happened is a few of you have had tech problems uh, in kind of week one, week two, carried over into week two. This is why I haven't done grades yet. I'd rather do all the grades at one time. However, I'm gonna to get to those this weekend, and then you should start to expect that you'll get grades kind of Monday, Tuesday of the following due date, which is that Saturday at midnight time period. Um, so if you're getting a little concerned about not seeing grades yet, that's the reason why is that we've had some individuals in the class kind of had delays in technology syncing or whatever else it was. So that is the reason why it's not for in terms of me slacking or shirking my responsibilities. I will get on that as soon as everybody who intends to turn things in turns things in. Um, so week three is a very, very important week in terms of moving forward for cultural anthropology. This is where the field starts to get a little bit more complicated and technical in terms of the fieldwork methods and the theory that is associated with cultural anthropology. So I'm going to go through all that stuff today, hopefully give you a good enough background so that you feel a little bit more comfortable. Um, for the research paper, when you guys do your ethnographies and you study an event and also do a couple interviews or a few interviews, you're going to want to be thinking about what theoretical orientation interests you and also kind of speaks to you. So again, today's going to be kind of a brief overview. If you guys need any more clarification on the theoretical orientations in anthropology, I will be happy to clarify those via, again, email. Um, all right, jump in. So the methods, again, if you watch the supplemental video on Malinowski, you're going to get a better understanding of what he did for the field. Branislaw Malinowski worked at the London School of Economics and really transformed the field. And he didn't necessarily transform the field as a first of doing it because Boas did it up in the Arctic. But he starts to demand that the field do this. And this is really a movement out of this idea of armchair anthropology or archaeology in terms of talking about and analyzing data from the comfort of your own library instead of actually going out in the field. So what Malinowski gives us is participant observation. And again, humans from time eternal have been observing and analyzing other humans. However, humans didn't necessarily used to just go and live with another culture group just to study them. And this is where anthropology is going to be much more unique. So early anthropologists would go in and observe, and a lot of times Mead is critiqued for this early on in her field research, where she would stay with missionaries, but then would go and observe the local tribes in Samoa. Malinowski again demands that we participate. So when we go, let's say that we're studying a group in the South Pacific, if we land on the island, we instantly have to shed our Western clothes and take on the indigenous clothing. We have to shed our food taboos and take on indigenous food. We have to learn the language. And not only that, we have to participate in the rituals and we have to participate in their daily life. You don't get to just show up and be kind of king or queen where the natives feed you. That's not what anthropology is. You have to do the work of the people. So your day in and day out should look exactly like the people so that you get a contextual, holistic view of those people's lives. Again, it's not enough just to come back and explain all the fun rituals or interesting facts that you discovered. That day-to-day life stuff, that process stuff, the practice stuff that Bordeaux talks about that I'll get to later, that's the important stuff. And that's really where the meaning of kind of what we do and how we behave is found. A lot of the ritual stuff is just kind of the build-up or the climax of all of those things. But again, it's kind of like watching the end of a movie without seeing the whole movie for the context of that ritual. It's important that we live the life of the people that we're actually studying. Rapport is a word that is used outside of the field, obviously, but it is vastly um, underrated in terms of anthropology. Building rapport, aka trust, and a relationship with the culture that you are studying is vitally important. If you're not able to build this, you are not going to get good quality information. In fact, groups may lie to you, they may tease you, it may not just, it just might not go well. So rapport is, again, one of those trust things, but also it moves into what Redfield said was friendship. Make friends with culture. And really, I try to utilize this in all of my field work that I do. And not only are you trying to build trust and rapport, but be a friend to that culture group and the people there. So that it becomes less about reciprocity and what you're trading in terms of symbolic goods like knowledge, and it becomes more about you living with them for that time and sharing time with them, that moment. And this is really what I've done in the Yucatan. I've gone back 12 times now since 2004. And really when we land, we pretty much make contact with our friends who were actually part of my thesis study, who have now become really, really good friends, to the point where we go and eat dinner with them, and we go out together and eat, and we've gone to the equinox of Chichen Itza in 2008, and I rented a van and I took the family, the Mayan family that lives in Cancun, with us. And, this wasn't it didn't evolve out of some underhanded or need to write a thesis. That's not what happened at all. Originally in 2004, when I went down to the Yucatan, we were just there on vacation. However, I started grad school about 2 months after I went to the Yucatan and decided, I want to do the studies. I want to do my studies on the Mayan of the Yucatan, which, again, when I went to the Yucatan in 2004, I was kind of under the impression, like a lot of people, that the Mayan people died out. And really, you start to realize, wow, they're speaking the language, they're believing in the religious stuff, and so this is what sparked my interest. The friendship stuff formed out of conversations and spending time with people. But really, it started with rapport, and then it moved into friendship, and now it's lifelong friendship. These people are actually more of family than they are friends at this point. And again, it's hard to describe that whole process, but it didn't take very long to move into that category at all. So to the point of, a couple of years ago, we went back to the Yucatan, and the daughter, who was, I think, 8 when we first met her, was finishing up her work at the university. And we went and spoke there with the nonprofit that I'm associated with. So again, this is building rapport, but moving participant observation and rapport into friendship, I think, is kind of an important piece. And Mead ends up doing this in Papua New Guinea. She goes there multiple times to do longevity studies, but at the same time, she's in love with these people. She loves these people. And I, again, reading a lot of these early anthropologists, I realized, it's not something that I have to premeditate on and do out of some desire to further my career goals, but it's actually a natural human process. If you spend enough time and enough laughs and share food and stories and life and those kinds of things, you become friends with people. And again, this is kind of where field work can move into these other things. And then you kind of have the conflict theorists always saying, well, you did it because I was never forced to go back 12 times after that. It's expensive to travel. But again, these are kind of giving you a glimpse in terms of my what started out as an anthropological method and moved into more of like life and love and family and friendship and those kinds of things. Gift giving and exchange gets into some interesting water, really. In my mind, the only thing that should be transferred is maybe, uh, again, if you're there in the South Pacific and you're working with a group of people, time should be shared, and that's the most valuable thing. In the end, most of us value our time on this planet, even though we don't think we do or we're not cognizant of it all the time. Um, but if you spend enough time with people, they put you in the same kind of in-group mentality, and that family mentality starts to take form. In terms of exchange and gift giving, uh, gifts get a little bit, um, giving gifts or accepting gifts gets into this reciprocity issue, and we'll talk a ton about reciprocity down the road. But what it does is it causes some angst, and also, well, if I do this, then you'll do this. It gets into more of an economic relationship rather than kind of an emotional relationship, and I don't think you're going to get the best information that way. What I always tell anthropology students is that what we should be exchanging is symbolic goods. And in symbolic goods, we're talking about life stories, family history, belief systems, uh, sports, fashion, whatever you want to talk about. Those are the things that we should be sharing. What makes us tick individually, and then giving the people that we're studying the opportunity to share what makes them tick. That's really what we're going for. Quantitative and qualitative, again, very important terms. Quantitative research is much more data-driven, much more numbers, and there are anthropologists who go down that road. However, I would say that anthropology tends to be much more qualitative, which is subjective, and using the inner subjective, which we'll talk about later in this lecture as well. But again, quantitative tries to be objective, qualitative tries to be, or embraces the subjectivity of individuals and humanity. Emic and etic, these are two very important terms that you're going to need to know. Okay? The emic perspective is the insider perspective, right? That is, if I go study a group, they're going to have a perspective or a world view, and that is the emic perspective. The etic perspective is the anthropologist's viewpoint or the outsider viewpoint. Now, the overall goal is to, if I spend a year and a half with a group in Tahiti, in terms of a local indigenous group, I am coming into that with an etic perspective. I've been trained in anthropology. I know what the etic perspective is, that outsider being able to view down and view kind of the cultural components and analyze that. That is the etic perspective. But my biggest goal in this participant observation experiment is to gain the emic perspective. If I can start thinking like the people that I'm working with or living with or studying, I have now started to gain the emic perspective. Now, you never want to lose the etic perspective, because if you just kind of go with the locals' perspective and the emic perspective, you've kind of lost track of the anthropology. So this is quite a dance that anthropologists have to do. In terms of the anthropologist toolkit, really, to be honest, a pen or a pencil and paper are very key things. However, even those two things can start to scare people off from them telling you the truth. Pen and paper, in many people's eyes, is a permanent thing. You're writing down quotes, you're doing these things. So a lot of times my fieldwork was conversations, informal survey or informal interviews, conversations, and then when I got back to my room or where I was staying, I would write down everything that happened in the conversation that we had. And that was kind of my avenue. Remember, anthropologists also may use a camera if the people they're studying allow them to take pictures of them. You know, things like that. But the toolkit itself is more about our training. And our training is going to be more about what I talk about today. But yeah, so you're going into it with anthropology kind of training, theory, these methods that we're talking about, idea about ethical and unethical field work. Those are also very important that we'll discuss today. But really, I mean, in terms of tools that we use in the field, that pen and paper, obviously a laptop is common now, but you're not going to want to necessarily bring those out in front of your subjects. People tend to tell you kind of different things based on their view of what that means. ethnography,